I mentioned the reason. You may have noticed I didn't say electronics. Electronics are part of it. The Kaiser Family Foundation just came out with a report, updated a report they did a few years ago. A few years ago, they found that kids were spending about 44 hours a week plugged into some kind of electronic medium in the United States. This new report just came out a few months ago. It's up to over 53 hours a week. Now, just in the last few years, it's increased. The people doing that study were stunned. They said they were stunned. They didn't think there were that many more hours in the week that the kids could be plugged into electronic media. It's important not to demonize video games, TV, etc. That is a symptom, not the cause. My profession, media, will try to demonize video games. It's very convenient. But the more we talk about that, and yes, that's an issue, but the more we talk about that, the less we will talk about the level of fear we feel. The less we will talk about how we are overstructuring our kids' lives and we're not valuing independent play. The less we will talk about urban design and these other issues. In any case, this movement is spreading. There are things like family nature clubs that are being started up all over the United States. What this is a second grade teacher and father in Roanoke, Virginia, wrote me an email a couple years ago and said that his family had started going outdoors. They had started going to parks because they'd read Last Child, they'd read some other things, and they were inspired. They wanted to get their kids into nature. And they were doing this every weekend. Some weekends they went on a hike in the park. Some weeks they actually did things like stream reclamation. And then one day the 5-year-old turns to his father and tugs on his father's pant leg and says, "Dad, how come we're the only family having this much fun?" So the father started reaching out to other families. This is a couple years ago. Today he has over 400 families on his email list. And what these families do is through the internet or that old-fashioned thing called the telephone, they arrange for essentially family nature play dates at the park or other places in nature on weekends. Let's say, let's show up, all of us, at the park on Saturday. There's something similar happening in the UK, green gyms, the idea that, there's some evidence that when you do this, expend the same amount of energy in a green setting as you do on a treadmill in a gym, that there is something about nature itself that adds value to that. We need more research on that. But in any case, these green gyms are starting to pop up in the UK. This is a different way to approach exercise. And green exercise, as Howard told me 2 years ago, we're going to hear more about that in the future. But these family nature clubs, they do several things. They deal with a fear problem because there's perceived safety in numbers. Any kind of family can do it. Think how great this would be for single-parent families who have great logistical issues and they need some help from other families. Any kind of neighborhood can do it, urban, suburban, any kind of economic group can do this. There's no barrier to this. And you don't have to wait for foundation funding. You don't have to wait for government funding. You can do it yourself and you can do it now. So we've developed a free toolkit that you can download from the Children and Nature Network website, which is childrenandnature.org. There are efforts like our sister website, which is Nature Rocks, has a similar toolkit you can download. That kind of solution, I think, is something we've got to look at a lot more, particularly in tough economic times. We've got to figure out ways to do this that are non-traditional, that actually begin to change culture, not only create more programs. There's a difference there. Creating more programs, connect kids to nature, supporting the park programs that do that, very important. But we've got to figure out how to seed the culture so that people begin to do this on their own. Another thing we hope to start is the Natural Teachers Network. When I give my sermonettes around the states, oftentimes 2 or 3 teachers will come up to me and say, we're trying to get our kids outdoors, but it's tough because the school administration doesn't want us to. There's no money for field trips, et cetera, et cetera. These are often not the environmental educators. Sometimes they are. Often it's the English teacher, You know, the biology teacher, the art teacher who are getting kids outdoors. They need to be networked, they need to be encouraged, they think they're alone right now. Let me end by saying that, and this is apropos to some of the comments earlier, which I so appreciated, which are along this line. We need to be very careful about how we talk to our kids and ourselves about the future. David Sobel at Antioch talks about what he calls ecophobia, fear of environmental destruction. That's fine for us. We need to act on that. But when we start giving kids, even before they've had the experience of a joyful time in nature just digging a hole, even before that, we start scaring them to death with tales of the end of the world. We need to be careful. I was asked to speak at our local high school a couple years ago. I didn't want to do it. I was tired. I was back from a trip. But I started thinking, I wrote this book about kids. I started feeling guilty, so I went. I expected 20 kids. There were 200 kids waiting for me. They'd been given extra credit. I talked for an hour, and you could have heard a pin drop, and it's not because I'm a great speaker. I'm not. It's because of something else. I talked about two things. I talked about the fact that their health, the full use of their senses, the full being alive, their health is directly related, can be directly related to the amount of time they spend in a positive way in the natural world. It can be greatly enhanced. The second thing I talked about is because of global warming, because of these huge problems with the environment that we do face, everything in the next 40 years will need to change. That's actually good news to a creative 16-year-old. We need now a whole new civilization. We need to begin to talk about what that civilization would look like. That it's not just about sustainability. Sustainability is a useful word, I still use it, but somehow it doesn't really describe where we need to go. Sustainability as a word suggests stasis. No self-respecting 16-year-old creative person is interested in stasis. They're interested in creativity. They're interested in creating a new future. When the kids left, I turned to the biology teacher and invited me. I said, what was that all about? Why were they paying so much attention? And he said, easy answer, Rich. You said something hopeful about the future of the environment. They never hear that. But when you begin to think about it, when you think about biophilic design, which can create workplaces with nature throughout that workplace, built into the design and then kept there, and the people who work in those places will be more productive, sick time goes down, et cetera, et cetera. Same with schools, same with neighborhoods, same with whole cities. The truth is that because of these issues we face, we may well, and we better be, entering one of the most creative periods in human history. That's good news to a 16-year-old. Martin Luther King said, in many ways, that any culture, any movement will fail if it cannot paint a picture of a world that people will want to go to. We need to begin painting that picture. We cannot only talk about the deficits. We cannot only talk about environmental calamity. We've got to paint a picture of a world that will be more than sustainable, that will be a world that all of us would like to live in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.